Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with one of my favorite nerds, Kurt, one of our fans, one of our top tier patrons, and you couldn't make the Nine of the Nag the other night, is my understanding. So here we are.
Right. Nothing for anyone to subscribe to or buy for me. There's a difference.
uh, so, so how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I actually just am coming off. We finished up an entire campaign last night or this morning at 2 in the morning. We normally don't go anywhere near that late, but the fight just kept going on and we kept losing, so we had to fall back and fall back and fall back to finally defeat a Lich Queen.
I feel you there. I don't. We don't nearly game as late as we used to anymore either. It's what happens as you get older. So I think today, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I figure maybe you could field some GM 911s if people have them. You were asking me about GenCon a little bit, so we could definitely talk about that as well. And whatever you guys in the chat you want to throw out there, you got GM 911s, you got questions, hit us with them.
Did you have a table this year at Gen Con?
We did not. I think our first table will be at PAX Unplugged, and we will be booth bearding for Brian Feaster and Open Legend over there. So we have not. Thanks, Fraginator. So we have not actually officially done any tables. I don't really know what we would do with a table, to be honest with you. Like maybe if we were like doing a bunch of live broadcasting, but there's obstacles with internet with these things. Like at Gen Con, if you wanted internet, it was like $1,000 an hour. Now you might have got a better deal if you took it for a week or all day, but how much better is it going to get?
You might. I don't know anything about the sort of back end of how the cons work. I've only ever attended them just as a regular schmo with my passes. But you could just record while you were there, edit it all, and then put it up later.
Yeah, that would be the other thing is, do that. But we can kind of do that for like roaming.
Right. That's a good point.
So I guess it's hard to justify the cost of a table. So like unless it's going to expand our reach or do something for our fans.
You don't sell products other than yourselves.
Yeah. And Ted gets really angry when I try and sell him. I don't know why.
I don't know why. You give a little extra coin on the side.
we got to explain to Ted's wife. I don't know what happened.
Own your own Nerdarchy while supplies last.
Yeah. And not only that, we saw 3 of them were out.
That's what happened to Ryan, right?
Yeah. He didn't really leave. We sold him. He's doing art. We have a question. We had a GM 911 over here that I just saw. Okay, Lords of the Storm, GM 911. I have a player at my table who goes berserk if his character gets killed, but complains that the combats are too easy. What should I do? See, that's tricky because that's a personality issue. And sorry, guys, I may die and become a zombie on the stream. But that stuff like that is always tricky because that is something that you have to address like person to person and have a conversation with them and see if you can meet in the middle. But unfortunately, some people are just unreasonable. Actually, I would like to throw this one to you, Kurt. You kind of probably have a lot of experience with arbitrating and dealing with people.
I mean, I would say, I would agree, first of all, that there's a little bit of a disconnect between saying, I want combats to be hard, but I don't want them to be dangerous enough to kill my character. Especially if you're the frontline fighter, like you're going to go down at some point. But I do sort of wonder from the question, when you say die, do you mean go unconscious or his character is actually dead and you need magic to resurrect him? I can imagine give somebody like a rod that lets them cast Revivify once a day, and maybe that can be used to save the player and placate him a little bit. But some requests by players on occasion are actually unreasonable. And saying I want a hard fight that's not dangerous is kind of illogical.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there's no risk, then it wasn't what he asked for. If he dropped, then he complains you're doing it too hard. So some people you're just not going to please, and that's just the way it is.
I mean, I suppose you could come up with rules. I don't find 5e to be super lethal to begin with. It's a little hard to kill people. You can do it, but I guess you come up with rules that make it even harder to actually kill people. But if he's upset that he's just going unconscious, then I don't know what to do with that. Like, you've got to have some penalty for not fighting well enough. Not fighting good enough, I almost said.
So Alex's suggestion is make the enemy somehow go after him more. I did something very similar, and it worked very well. Sorry, guys. I'm going to try not to cough into the mic too much here. Yeah, I can see that, and then and that might work for some players, but then you might get another player, and it's like, oh, now you're picking on me. Like when someone's being irrational, like you said, like you never know what exactly is going to trigger that irrationality. But I mean, you could play with that a little bit, especially if their character is the tank, where you can kind of justify it,
right?
And maybe possibly say like role play some things that make him feel like better. Like, oh no, we got to take out this guy. He's the really strong one or the powerful one or something. But maybe he can stroke his ego a little bit at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I wonder what the player is looking for when he says tougher fights. And by the way, when I say irrational, I don't use that as an insult. I just tend to throw it out there to mean illogical.
Well, you know what? In this case, it might be apropos because Lord of Storms weighed in. He goes insane if he dies, but gets mad if he's unconscious, and starts swearing and pounding the table. All right, so like that actually just might be a player you don't want to invite back if they can't be civil, especially if it's their table, they can probably pound on it. It's not a big deal, but if it's someone else's table, that's kind of BS.
Well, I wonder, what does he mean then by more difficult fight? Like, he can't mean monsters that hit his character harder, because he doesn't like that.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, buddy, I don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe you need a new player. But yeah, like they actually get like a physical reaction. People are swearing and pounding on the table. That's a bit much. So Excalibur's LPS has one for us. I have a GM 911 running a solo campaign for one of my players. Combat is going well, but the story is kind of suffering from not having multiple people to bounce around ideas. Any tips? So to me, that the multiple people, unfortunately, is going to be you, the GM, using NPCs and interacting with that character, which gets weird because if you only have one player and you being the GM, there's going to be more instances where there's multiple NPCs weighing in while that player is there. So now you have to role play to yourself, which I hate doing personally.
Yeah, it gets to be a little bit awkward. It helps, and I know not everyone likes to do this. It helps me when I have to do it if my NPCs have different voices, so that at least in my head and hopefully in the player's head, I can differentiate as to who's speaking, as opposed to announcing and then Jim says and then Varl says over and over again every time I have to change voice.
Yeah, and it's also more organic if you're doing that way and doing voice changes, and it can be tricky because not everyone does voices. But in that instance, you might want to attempt it, even if it's not necessarily doing accents, but different like speaking mannerisms.
Right. One guy could speak like much more slowly than the other. That usually works fairly well. It's fairly easy just to add a little gravel to your voice, and one character can have a sort of gravelly voice, and the other one can be your regular voice. It doesn't have to be accents at all in order to differentiate it. But on the fly, sometimes you have two previously introduced characters who both have your voice.
Yeah,
and they have to interact. So you can't always easily do it. The advantage of a one-player campaign, although it's been many years since I've done one of those, is you can really dig very deep into the backstory of that one character and make a plot that is all about that character's personal struggles and what interests that particular player, because you don't have to cater to everyone at the table. But there are downsides too. I mean, I don't know how I would run a campaign if it was one player who really didn't like to speak up, like that quiet player who likes to watch things unfold. Then I don't know how you get all the NPCs would interact, and occasionally you hear the player say something.
Yeah, that would be really difficult and challenging. But if you think about it, many of the novels and books are written about one character, so it's not so it really isn't hard to have a story unfold that way. Armored Anathema. I'm not sure how you say that. Anathema. Question: I know you talk about this system a lot. Would you ever consider running another M&M3E game in the near future? I think it would be pretty interesting to see you play high fantasy in it. We would absolutely run another game, but we probably would not run it as fantasy because, I feel like D&D is high fantasy, right? So if we're going to go to another system like that, a system that really supports playing superhero characters, that's what we'd play with it. I actually have a couple ideas for some games that I like to play. There's this Hard Luck Hank series that I've been listening to, and it's almost like space cowboy-ish, but it's written with a lot of humor, and I would love to like dabble around in that universe a little bit.
And that would lend itself to Mutants and Masterminds. I don't know
the
series.
Well, I'd probably use Cypher System or Fate, something that's really generic. They can like run anything in. Mutants and Masterminds would probably work as well. Second edition was really good at that because they also came out with a lot of books to kind of like to change it up and run the different types of games.
Yeah, I've played third edition, but I'm much more familiar with second edition because we played that for a couple of years. Yeah,
that's same here. Although I do like the third edition better. I like the changes they made. They did, sometimes the system would change and it's like the changes feel arbitrary, but these felt really organic and like the right direction to go in.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I haven't played it as much, but that's because 5e has taken up a lot of our time. But it did seem like it sort of made the system a little easier to follow and a little more interesting to play, I thought.
Yeah, and you know how they did that? They did that by taking things out from D&D.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
All great art steals from somewhere.
So GM 911 from Tesmic. I'm running a Mutants and Masterminds game, and one of my players also GMs and always feels the need to tell me how they run my campaign and dislikes it when there are consequences for actions. I could see how that could be problematic and depends on how they do it as well. If they're doing it during the game that as you're playing it, that would most certainly be bothersome. I usually like talking about the games I'm running and I like getting feedback, so I don't think I would mind that as much. It just depends like how it's delivered.
Yeah, I think it comes down to tone. In general, I love constructive criticism. If people want to tell me a better way to do something I'm doing, I'm usually thrilled to get that. But it can come off as snarky, you're doing it wrong, and then it's not going to be quite as welcome.
Or you could just say, like Kyle said, tell the player to run their own game.
Right. Well, I have told players that too. Like, people who just want a different kind of story than the stories I like to tell. I mean, obviously, you try to adapt the story to the players that are at your table, but sometimes the easiest adaptation for all the players at the table isn't to one player's liking. That player is always free to run a game themselves that does exactly what they want to do.
And, something that's being brought up in the comments by a lot of different people in the chat is that there's different play styles, and Tesmic, you're running your play style. That's absolutely the truth. And that GM should, the GM and players should accept that, and it's going to be different when each GM takes the chair and gets behind the screen. Everybody's going to do it their own way. They're going to have their own flair and their own way of running games. And I enjoy that. I enjoy experiencing, different things that DMs do. I learn from those GMs. So, maybe you can just have a conversation with them and just tell them how you feel about it and you don't really like it. So communication is usually the number one go-to.
Or every time he criticizes you, an owlbear attacks.
Yeah, there you go. When all else fails, rain owlbears down from above. Jadub 137 GM 911. I'm prepping my first campaign. Congrats. The DM that I've been playing with is a great DM, but he tends to be railroady, and I want to be different. Any advice on running an exploration-focused game? So I would actually recommend checking out the Lazy DM if you haven't, because he actually kind of goes into this a little bit in that book. Like there's a section, and it really does talk about it. And so the key to having a non-railroady game that's more of a sandbox is having interesting things going on and places to explore where your players are. And this way it helps you kind of guide the action without telling them what to do. Also, you can delve into their backstories.
Right. I would add to that if you want to have a purely sort of sandbox game, that's sometimes hard to do. And it's good to talk about it in session 0, because I've been in a situation where I had so much going on in the game world that there were too many choices and different players wanted to do different things, and the game became very unfocused. And it just became hard to run the game as effectively, because you couldn't build a single story because the players were constantly going off on little side quests that didn't necessarily relate to even the plots that some of them were really interested in. I like to give people kind of like maybe 3 major plot lines that are developing. And if they choose something completely different, okay, I'll develop a 4th plot line and drop one of the original 3 to just try to provide some structure so that I can tell a story.
I literally think in the Lazy GM, that's literally what he does. And some of those plot lines are actually connected. So it just kind of makes it easy. Like, it's not really that important to give players choices, is to give the illusion of choice and to not tell them they can't do things.
Right. I mean, you can always sort of readapt a story that they completely ignored and just move that whole dungeon over here where they are. now, without realizing it, they've basically gone through the dungeon you prepared a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so really, like, and I've heard people get angry, like, when you bring up the idea of the illusion of choice, that, oh my god, I can't believe you changed something that the players never knew about. But I'm really a big fan of it. Doesn't exist until it exists. And ultimately, as the DM, you are kind of like the deity of the world. You are the creator of everything. So that isn't the players. So it doesn't matter as long as they're having fun.
Right. If you come up with a really cool NPC or encounter or challenge, and it's off in this room on the left, and the players consistently go right to avoid it, it's better for them. I mean, you put a lot of time and thought into this, and at least you think it's going to work out. Maybe you're wrong, but you understand your players. If you now shift that so that it's over on the right, they're never going to figure out that you did that, first of all, and they get the benefit of running through this encounter that you spent all this time building up. I mean, I think that it enhances the game. Matt Colville actually recently did a video on how railroading is not entirely the worst thing in the world. And at least in that sense, I certainly agree with him. Like, making sure that the work you put into something actually does get used is usually a good thing.
So, like, here's the deal, right? Railroading isn't the problem. Taking away the players and the characters' agency, that's the problem.
Right.
So, and there's a difference. So railroading is, well, you guide the players through a story. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. Like, literally, the most effective hooks you can ever introduce into a D&D campaign are provided by your players. Now, but I'm still putting it there. I'm still feeding it to them. And you know, it just so happens that they're taking the bait. And it's just about, like, knowing your players, knowing the characters that they've created, and knowing which buttons to push to get certain reactions. Right. Some could say that's railroady, right? But I'm not making them do anything. I just kind of have an idea what they're going to do because they told me about this thing in their backstory that's important to the character, which means it's important to the player. So all you do is go, oh, that thing you said is important. Here it is. And then they'll eat it up.
Well, two things I like to cover in session 0. One is I will throw out a couple ideas for like overall campaign arcs, or at least, things that are going on in the world that they might be interested in. I like to get some sense of what would motivate the characters they want to play and what they're looking for in the game, so that I can kind of base a story or a plot around that. And maybe the game goes off in its own direction, but at least at the beginning of the game, it's helpful to know what your players are interested in. The second thing I like to do in session 0 is I personally prefer to go around the table and get all of the characters to establish some kind of relationship with one another prior to the game. Like maybe first character gives a background, and then the second player will say, well, okay, I'm his brother. So now this guy has a brother. And then the third person will say how he's related to the first two. And then at least, have a connection to at least 2 other players, so that way you can get past the whole, well, why would I adventure with you phase? Why don't I just sit here in the tavern and you guys can go off and fight that obviously dangerous monster?
Yeah. Essentially, like I think Cody not too long ago from Taking 20 did a video on Make an Adventurer, right? And like we played a pickup game at GenCon. It was me, Cody, GM Juice, and staff editor Doug, and my son David. And like, all right, what level you guys want to be? All right, make up characters. You're an adventuring party already. We're not gonna, it's a one shot. We're not gonna dick around with this. We're just gonna get into the game. We're gonna roll some funny shaped dice and kill some monsters and play. And but the truth of the matter is, whether it's a one shot or an ongoing campaign, there's no reason why you can't just do that from the beginning. If you look at one of the original and most famous adventuring parties of all time, the companions of the Heroes of the Lance, like they all knew each other when things started pretty much. And then the story starts. They come together, story starts. You didn't have to worry about it. Maybe some characters were added along the way, but for the most part, everybody was already together and they could go out and adventure.
Right. I frequently had players who, a lot of players play their characters as very, very cool. And so consequently, because their characters are so cool, it's you, the other players, have to convince me that your characters are cool enough that I would travel with you.
So, oh my God, yeah.
I've tried to overcome that a little bit by saying, yeah, everybody already knows one another and you're all cool.
Well, yeah, and it just comes to, at this point in the game, I'd be like, all right, that guy is going to sit in the tavern. And then he'd be like, well, when's my turn? Your turn is when you can find a way to interact with the other players in the game. Otherwise, you can just sit there because, this is a group activity.
Well, and I find normally in the end, whoever it is, it's usually not like everybody. It's usually one holdout. But whoever it is will wind up sitting there, and he'll come up with some reason, but you can tell like it's not very organic. Like his character would not have really made this decision to go with these people. So I just find that in session 0, and you don't have to, you could always say, no, I don't have any real prior relationship with these people. But I find it's very helpful if everybody has some connection, even if it's like childhood friend or, we were friendly rivals growing up and we're always trying to outdo one another. Something like that, or he's the son of the guy who trained me, or I'm here to learn some skill from him. Something that gives you a reason to be around them. It helps me out as a DM a lot, because I don't generally view that as my job. Like I can't tell you people should all hang out. For all I know, the 4 of you should leave the arrogant guy at the tavern and go off and have your own adventure, because who wants to travel with a jerk?
Exactly. So we have another GM 911 from Dorfishizzle. In my homebrew campaign, the elf PCs are racist towards the drow PC as per the backstory of the world and the characters, and it's causing cooperation problems. How do I fix this RP wise? So frankly, there's nothing you personally can do for the most part, because other people, it's like, I wish, like everyone wishes they had like a magic wand that could wave and fix other people, but it doesn't work that way.
I think this is a creation of the problem we were just talking about. What I would normally do in that situation is out of character, basically just remind everyone again that this is a cooperative game and that there should be some way for this drow to kind of win them over, even if they're racist towards all of the other drow, which probably makes sense in a world where the drow are just evil. Like this one guy should be able to win them over eventually, and they should be looking for ways to increase the party unity over time.
Yeah, and that's
if they're just unwilling to cooperate as players as opposed to in character, then there's an issue you're probably not going to be able to overcome.
And like you said, the that conversation too could also take place in you as a group discussing how these dynamics could change and what would change it, so that you have a plan, so the players have a plan of attack and that they can implement in the game. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. Right, we can kind of script some things if it makes the game better, especially if there's a problem that's detracting from the game. I would say absolutely, talk to your players, and let them create the path to where this conflict kind of gets resolved, and what was going to fix it for them. Why do all elves hate drow in your world? Oh, because they're evil SOBs. Well, is this drow evil? Oh no, he's actually a good guy, and he saves orphans all the time. Well, maybe they can start noticing the good deeds that he's doing, and and they can move forward from there. But a plan, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a little bit of a plan to discuss things, and perhaps even you as the DM giving the drow opportunities to do really cool things that might help sway the other characters. But again, he would have to take advantage of those opportunities and basically make the right choices as well. We got another one. Mark Newell. So we got 6 players, all novice, low character levels. Campaigns takes place in the midst of massive goblinoid invasion in town. Gnome rogue attempted an unwise pickpocket and rolled really badly. It looks like he badly busted party, fled, getting away thanks to timely charm spell from the sorcerer. Problem now is the character, and by extension the party, are in outs with the townsfolk, including the local monastery, which is home to the party's monk. What now? Sorry guys, it was like in 3 different chat messages with conversations in between. So that can be tricky, and that is one of the problems with doing things that have consequences. And
I would say, you don't necessarily want to take away from the monk character the fact that he has this sort of base of this resource in the form of his monastery there. I would say if you want someone at the monastery to have a grudge against the monk because of this, that's fine. But a monastery is not like one person. It doesn't have one opinion. He should still continue to have some sympathetic ally there. If not, maybe have the monastery not really hold him accountable for this, but maybe have like one character in the monastery, like somebody high up in his order, who blames him for the actions of this rogue who tries to pickpocket people.
And also too, let's backtrack a little bit, right? What are the consequences for committing a crime in a town, or any place for that matter, right? Is it imprisonment? Is it the hand gets lopped off, or is it just a fine? Or could the rogue literally just bribe his way out of it? Could the party bribe their way out of it? Is there other solutions to this? Because it seems like a rather small thing. He's pickpocketing. Did they get caught with the charm spell? Like, that would be more serious in my mind than the pickpocketing. So you might have some other avenues to explore. Maybe the party returns the rogue to face justice, and you could do a whole campaign or adventure around that. We, in our game, the game that Ted ran, Uthengar went to trial. So there's definitely things that you can do, and some of it doesn't have to be all by the books. It can be a little hand wavy, as long as it makes for a good story and you guys are having fun.
And I would say that it is sort of interesting, even if he gets away with it, even if he bribes his way out of it. It can be interesting if still the monk order, someone in the monk order says, why are you hanging around with these people? Like, you are supposed to be I assume he's a lawful monk because so many monks are, but like, you were supposed to be adhering to the tenets of his order, and that means you shouldn't be hanging out with people like that. That's a sort of interesting development to me, at least if I were the player, that I have this tension now because I have to now balance in my character's mind rather, why I am adventuring with this rogue, and I should just like before, I ultimately do have to come up with a reason why I am adventuring with this rogue, even though it is in tension with this other set of tenets that I hold. So I don't mind having that there, having that tension in my character.
To me, it sounds like it's like a jumping off point for another adventure, right? Or a series of adventures. And even like you said, even if the rogue is able to bribe his way out of it, well, now he might probably have some foils in the town that he's going to have to deal with. So, that's going to create interesting things going forward. For me, I think you've got an opportunity to do a lot of fun things. Like maybe he makes enemies or foils because he's bribed the right people, but the other people now they're that they have a problem with it, and they know what's going on. So that it's going to be a thorn on their side, but a thorn in your side doesn't have to be combat or violence all the time.
Right. Actually, one thing I find that a lot of players miss, and that I miss even sometimes when I'm a player, is there's this desire to kind of avoid problems with your character, like avoid having enemies, avoid having these, like, you never, so many player characters are orphans because you don't want to have family members there to be kidnapped by gnolls or whatever. But at the end of the day, the odd thing about it is, as much as you struggle against that sort of thing as a player, those things make the game more fun. So I find I'm generally of two minds, where I'm always trying to arrange things where nothing bad happens to my character. But the best characters I've ever had are the characters who had no luck and had bad things happen to them.
Well, yeah, even if you look at novels, look at like Jim Butcher's Dresden Files series. Like Harry Dresden's life sucks all the time, and horrible things happen to him. And that's why we like to read it, right? Because it's interesting, it's fun, it's exciting. You want to see what's going to happen.
Right. I mean, you want to overcome those troubles. You want to be able to beat them in the end, but you always want to have your character in some degree of trouble with someone.
So we're more than halfway through. So guys, if you want to start kicking off the roll call, and also, greetings everyone that's popped in. I saw White Rabbit just came in at the halfway mark. Thanks for stopping in. We got like 60 plus people in the chat, which is awesome, guys. For you guys, and thank you for you guys that said you've missed me while I was away at GenCon. I missed you guys as well. We did manage one live stream from 1.5 live streams from GenCon. So we did the weekly wrap, and then we did a really bad stream of the Matt Mercer event. And by the way, that is up and recorded. If you guys want to check it out, not the bad one, but the good one. I know the sound quality on it isn't perfect, but if you guys are familiar with live stuff, the sound on live stuff is never great. But it's not bad. I thought it was pretty decent. You can definitely hear what's going on. That event was a lot of fun. All those guys did a great job on there. So we got AJ, Lopez Island, Washington, Poisons in Kuwait, Australia with Tesmic, Fragginator 1369, Seattle, Evil Silly Putty, Minnesota, Scratch Paper Games, Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. We got Joe from Sacramento. We got Ember Shade Innkeeper, Bryant, Arkansas. We've got Lincoln, Nebraska in the house, and it jumped. We lost you. John from Lincoln. We've got Wales in the house with Paul. Canada with Ivan. Boston with Kevin. Orange, California with Lavoyer. Netherlands, Lex Key 81. Fayette, Arkansas, I see up there. War Eagle. Let's see. Was it GenCon? Still missed you. Back in Redmond, Washington now. We got Beamer's RQ. Yeah, I got to come up with a better way with connecting you guys. Set up a meetup or something. I'll get better at this, I promise, guys. G-Dub is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We got Colorado somewhere. It's Derek. We got Northern British Columbia, Canada, Senhor Frio, Cannibal, Argentina. Alex is in the house from Atlanta. We got the Ukraine in the house too with Blunt Man. Welcome. Kyle from Nevada. Mel from Iowa. And got Milwaukee, Wisconsin with Dorfischl. We have got Scott from Wisconsin, Matt from Texas, Witherskid from Michigan, Wilder Smith, New York. We got Arizona in the house with James. We got Indiana with Drang, Mel in Iowa, Salem, Massachusetts with Camarade. So you guys are chiming in from all over the place. Awesome. 65 people in the chat. Welcome everyone. And like I said, I am going to have to come up with a better method for connecting with people at these events. The next one we'll be at is PAX Unplugged, and we should be hanging out at the Open Legend table. And this time it'll actually be all three of us. Ted, Nate, and myself will be there. Doug has attended the last two events with me. I don't think he's going to be able to make this one. At some point, his vacation time runs out, I believe. So before we got started, you were asking some questions about GenCon, and we can go into that too if you guys want.
Yeah, I was just interested in like what you had bought while you were there, and if you got to sort of wander the floor. Now that you're like a famous internet celebrity.
I'm not that famous yet. Although it was cool. Definitely a lot of people came up to me. Hey, Mike Gold. A lot of people came up to me and just thanked me for what we do, which, that felt really good, of course. I signed a handful of players' handbooks. I probably would have signed a lot more because I was on the Dream Stream for Maze Arcana. But I had like 2 events back to back, and I was trying to make sure the one was ready and set up at the same time when they're like, "Hey, why don't you stay and hang out with people here?" So that was a little tight. Pretty much, all I did was wander around. Yeah, we packed in some business meetings and stuff, but it was all around a good time.
You got to hang out with Mike Merles at a club.
Yes, I couldn't believe it. I got like 30-40 minutes with Merles, and Mike Gould. You kind of ruined the experience for me. All I could think about was like Mike Gould berating Mike Merles about the Warlock. But they what was it? I guess it was Saturday night was the Geek and Sundry party, and I actually knew a bunch of people going. So what I found out from all of them was it was an invite only party. And if your name was not on the list, you couldn't get in. Yeah, Mike. So, but once I found out who was actually the guy that put people on the list, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I met that guy out in LA and I talked to him. And he told me he's kind of runs Geek and Sundry over there. And he told me to connect with him at GenCon, but he didn't actually give me a way to get a hold of him. So I was there. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have his email. And I was like, well, he's never going to get an email in time. The party's on like less than 3 hours. So I was like, but wait a minute. In the email, there's probably a signature. So I was like, oh, I have his phone number. So that worked out. The only bummer was I had to abandon my son with some strangers. But other than that, it's fine. I figure, he eats a lot. I don't think anyone's going to want to keep him for too long. It'll get expensive. But, at the party, Mike Merles was standing there. I talked to him for a good 30-40 minutes. Keith Baker came in and almost recognized me. But he's been on the show a couple times. And I guess, I had grabbed a picture with him and Satine. And I guess either Satine said who I was or he asked her. And then I could see, the recognition because he's been on the show a couple times. I don't normally wear my hat, and I had my hat on. There was a couple axe throwers, so apparently all the Geek and Sundry people earlier that day went to this place and threw axes, so they were kind of hanging out. We were actually Rudy had came and grabbed me and Mike, and he's like, hey, do you want to play some cornhole? And I'm like, sure. And then there's this other guy standing next to us, and he's like, you want to play? He's like, yeah, I'll play. And then I realized that the guy standing next to him is the axe thrower. I'm like, I want that guy on my team. So, but then we went out to where the cornhole area was, and it was just packed with people, and it wasn't going to work. The DCs would have been increased by 10 at least. So yeah, so that was cool. I did buy something from Brian Collin, Creature Curations, on the Facebook page, and on my private page there is a picture floating around somewheres that you guys can check out. And it's like this really cool like blue and purple giant mouse looking thing, and it's like that big. It's got like these branch like tree like antlers. It's really cool. Crystal Sully had gifted me with one of the prints. She was really appreciative of us letting her launch her Kickstarter on the live chat last week, which she's kicking ass over there. So she's like, you can take any one of these prints that you want. So I picked up the Dracomelion, which is pretty sweet looking. I was like, my wife will like this. I brought that for her. And guys, also an update to that Kickstarter. If you're not paying attention, one of the Kickstarter goals is they're going to do PDFs for the monsters. So you'll not only will you get the book, you'll get the monsters in a PDF format. And that was they made that a stretch goal, but they blew by that in like no time flat. So I was a little on the fence whether I was going to get the art book or not. But now that they've added the PDF, I'm absolutely going to grab that. Taxidermy fantasy creatures. I don't know if you're responding to someone else, but yeah, that's kind of what Brian Collin does from Creature Curations, and that stuff is amazing. And we also picked up a bunch of DVDs from Zombie Orpheus, so we'll have more giveaways. We'll announce that on the weekly thing or the weekly wrap with the rest of the guys. So we got a nice haul for you guys. We got like 4 more 5 ebooks to give away. They're from a third-party publisher. I believe it's all like deities and demigods type stuff. So that's pretty cool. We also Mercedes Lackey donated a book and signed it as well. So our giveaway pile has greatly expanded from GenCon.
Were there any new products that you saw there that you were interested in?
There was so much stuff there. I mean, it's hard. Like Starfinder sold out like the first day.
Right.
But thankfully, my copy's upstairs. I had ordered it through Amazon, so I knew it would be here when I got home. But yeah, there's always so much great stuff.
If only you could find a way to give away a seat at the next Geek and Sundry party.
Yeah, there you go. So, speaking of Gen Con, did you get your hands on the copy of Critical Role Campaign Guide? I actually ordered it on Amazon, so I'm surprised it's not here already.
They canceled a bunch of orders for it on Amazon. I forget the issue, but there was some issue, and so they wound up just ignoring a bunch of orders for that campaign guide.
That may be what happened. I don't know. I'll have to check.
I was in that boat too, and then I had to go and like reorder it. I'm sure they sent me an email saying they were canceling the order, but I get so many emails from Amazon and elsewhere that I don't always open the Amazon emails.
Huh, that's really weird. I wonder why they would cancel it.
I wish I could remember. There was some sort of publishing issue that they were having on the pre-orders.
Probably it was like Green Ronin's like, no, buy it here. Screw you guys. Could very well be. I don't know. So yeah, now that they brought it up, I'm gonna have to look into that now.
Because it's been out for a while now.
Yeah, it has been. And I figured like usually Amazon's pretty good about when something comes out, it's usually on your doorstep that day.
Right. I mean, they give it a week before the local gaming stores can get a couple sales of it before Amazon usually gets it. And I'm sure Green Ronin did that here too.
Oh, that might be the case. I know that's a Wizards of the Coast thing specifically that they do. So it's possible.
I might be mistaken. I thought Green Ronin did that as well, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't actually know. I just know Watts does it. But so yeah, that's something I'll have to look into. What was I going to say? There was something. It was right on the tip of my tongue. So tonight will be the Scarlet Sisterhood. That's going to return. We're going to return to our regular schedule with that. Friday we're going to continue with the Open Legend game. So also I did get verbal confirmation that Mike will come on the show. So I don't know when we'll be able to hook that up, but I'm working on that. I think, but I talked to both Amy Dallin and Amy Vorpal. Sounds like we'll be able to get them on. And I don't know. Have you seen the Amy Vorpal DM's Lament?
I have not.
You got to watch it. Everybody out there, go watch that after this is over. So she did this like music video called DM's Lament, and it's great.
I
And,
even that sort of stuff. So I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, that it's definitely worth. I had seen it on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and it basically it definitely speaks to the problems all DMs have. So when, pardon me, when do we get some of the main Griffin Gaff games? That's a good question. So my game suffered a catastrophe. Half of the session that Bloodfang leaves the group permanently was lost. We don't know what happened. We don't know if it just wasn't recorded or deleted. So that's a mystery. We have the session after that, and I kind of got bummed out. And I was like, ugh, I almost went to rage quit. But and then Ted's game. Ted has a couple games that I'm not in that got recorded on his stuff, and I have to move it over. So it's just like getting the time to do that.
Maybe you should do like a little intro that just summarizes the game you lost and blames the gremlins for losing it.
Yeah, we might have to do we might actually have to do a recap.
At least if it's needed to understand what comes next, that makes sense to me.
They just have to figure out that there is another lost episode as well where the mic recorded from the wrong camera, and you can't hear anything at all. It wasn't even salvageable. So like these tech issues come up, they make me a little sad, but I'm not. What are you gonna do? It's just, growing pains. So we have like a full scale production studio. Is like Critical Role has, which is amazing. Would have loved to steal their set.
Just do like a bad lip reading of that video.
yeah, that would have been that might have been what we needed to do. Lavoyer, yeah, I saw that song. Pretty funny. I saw it on your Facebook, actually. Yeah, I had shared it. It was good stuff. Nice, Michael. You need to find a talented animator who can do a quick intro and rehash of the last week on Nerdarchy. Yeah, they're not exactly beating down my door, but it's not a bad idea. The Borges 23. How do you manage players' conflicts? Two of my players are certainly going to kill each other. The rogue stole the money from the mage. Well, here's the problem. Like, there's nothing to manage about that. Like, your players are just kind of being dicks to each other, and it creates a problem because it ruins everybody's fun. And even if you even if one of them kills the other one, then the other one's going to have the player is going to have a vendetta, even though the next character probably will not. Is what I've personally seen in my games.
Yeah, I've had that too. I mean, it's beyond session 0 at this point. Sometimes it helps in session 0 to talk about PvP, especially if you don't want it. But if these two players are just, they won't play together nicely at this point because their characters hate each other. There's not you can't take away your players' decisions to have their characters act however they're going to act. You can't take away their agency, so there's not that much you can do to ease over tensions. You could try to introduce story elements where the two of them have a common interest. I don't know the details, so that it's hard to sort of think of one. But certainly, like if one of those characters is an orphan, just like let some message from the gods come down that they're actually related, they're brothers or something, and then let them play from there.
Sometimes as a GM, you just want to take their heads and bump them together.
Right. I mean, there's a question of, is this really a player conflict, or is this purely just the characters in conflict? Are they really friendly, or is there some actual out of game tension now that their characters have come to odds? It's harder to deal with if there's some out of game tension.
That's actually an excellent point. If it stays in game, it's not a big deal and can probably get resolved one way or the other. But if there's actually becomes animosity between the actual players, then yeah, there's no fixing that. That'll carry over for the next 10 generations of characters. And so best thing is, Mike Gould pointed out, is to pull them aside and have a conversation and talk to them and try and hash it out.
Right. And I mean, again, we had this advice before, but it can be helpful to pull them aside and say, again, party unity is ultimately the goal because it's a cooperative game. So you two should consider trying to find a way for your characters to get closer and on the same page about these things. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. The making him the brother of the other character thing, I think, helps. Sometimes I've not done that specifically, but I have introduced plot lines where both characters wanted the same exact outcome, and that's helped a lot.
So, James Kroger, I have the hardest time building encounters. Any advice for not making encounters one round and it's over, or TPK every time? Actually, here's the thing: if you underjudge the encounter, it's not a big deal. People stress over this way too much. It's not even worth your it's not even worth any of your gray matter. Just move on, make it tougher next time, and just keep ratcheting it up a little bit. You know, the way I figure out my encounters is I just eyeball everything. I don't really use the challenge rating system. I loosely use the XP budget systems, but I go, hey, how much damage can my players doing around? How much area of effect power do they have? How much hit points can they take from one shot? Like, I look at these things and kind of eyeball and go, all right, this will work. Because, you know, sometimes I'll put something, I go, well, that's going to be too tough because this monster can literally one shot one of the characters. So that's not no good. Or, you know what, this encounter on paper looks like it's way too tough for the players, but I know the mage is going to hit Cone of Cold or Fireball and wipe out half of these guys anyway. It's as if they aren't even there.
Or this will be a controversial suggestion, but one of the things you can do if you're just trying to make the fight interesting is, okay, well, I guess this guy has twice as many hit points now because you just killed him in one turn. So now he'll last 2 turns.
Which is fine. Like, and there's definitely, that is definitely another way to do it. Like, the players don't know what's going on. They don't get to see, you know, they don't get to see what's behind the screen. So, you know, they don't know if it has 200 hit points or 400 hit points or 3. So right. You could literally just go, oh, well, I want this encounter to last a little bit longer, and be like, I've seen Ted go, yeah, this counter is going to be over in round 4, no matter what happens. So, yeah, you know, like, it doesn't matter how much damage we did.
I would feel bad about using that technique if there was a real risk to the party. Like, you know, if they one-shotted a Lich in 1 round, good for them, because if you keep a Lich alive for 2 rounds, the Lich might actually kill somebody. But for, you know, just to keep the sort of the combat entertaining, if they're constantly killing everything in 1 round, I think it could be useful just to fudge it, give the thing an extra hit point necessary to keep it alive.
Yeah, I think Lavoie is kind of saying basically he does it the way I do it, is just kind of like, I just eyeball everything and figure it out from there. And you know what? If it's too tough, they can always run away. You know, leave them an out.
I found I don't use the challenge rating system either. I did in the beginning, and everything, even at low levels, everything was way easier, I think, than the challenge rating system suggested it was going to be. So I initially just started figuring out the challenge ratings, assuming that like a deadly combat was actually going to challenge my real players. And that's when I realized, okay, well, now the challenge rating system isn't that useful.
Oh, wait a minute. David Bliss, he actually brings up Ted's favorite, right? So say your encounter is really easy, send in reinforcements, hit them with another wave, another 2 waves, whatever it takes to keep it going.
Right. That's also a good way to do it. Have a different monster appear suddenly on the other side of the players to at least to keep it interesting and to kind of divide their attacks. Especially, I mean, that works especially well if the monster you wanted to challenge them with isn't quite dead yet, and you have another monster appear. So now the PCs have to consider at least dividing their attacks, dividing their forces. In general, I would say every combat where you have multiple monsters is going to be an order of magnitude harder than any combat against like a single creature, because if the players can focus all their fire on one thing and there's really no decision about what to go after, they're going to bring that thing down quickly. The game is just sort of designed so that they can do massive amounts of damage and disable things if they're using their abilities to their fullest.
So the last suggestion I'll give is, and I'm reminded because Mike Gould is actually in the chat. He does a awesome series on nerdarchy.com called Out of the Box Encounters. So you could probably get some really good ideas there, and and Mike's kind of figured out some of this stuff, so you can take his lead on it. And there's over a year worth of encounters, so well over 52 encounters in there. There's a PDF you can download with that stuff on it. So if you search around on the nerdarchy.com website, you can get that information, and I think you'll find it invaluable. And there'll also be, not only will the CRs can kind of be set up for you, but they'll also be really cool and interesting encounters.
And related to the bring in reinforcements, the creature, if it's intelligent, can spring traps that it had prepared in advance. Certainly if it's in its lair, it can do things that can make things a lot harder, like drop the floor out from under certain PCs and they're falling. Or at least they had to make a deck save where they're falling.
Yeah, well, Ted did. He did a thing where he had kobolds, or they might even been half dragon kobolds that would run down a tunnel away from the players, and then if you followed them and you were heavy enough to trigger the traps, the size would come out of the wall, above the kobolds. But so if you're medium size or bigger, you get hit.
Right.
You can do there's always fun things you can do like that, and like I said, I would not sweat if your encounter is too easy. Like, it's a learning thing, and the players get to feel good about themselves. Evil Silly Putty question: my players are about to travel for a while. They are pirates, so on a boat to get a different island. How should I do this? Skip time, mini adventures in between. Like, there's no real right answer to that, to be honest. It's what do you want to do? Like, do you want to do side quests between? You could narrate the trip between. You could just go from one place to the other. It's really just what you want to do with the game. Is there stuff they want to accomplish on the boat? You could do where maybe 30 minutes is actually on the boat, and it's just maybe role-playing stuff spread out over several weeks or months even. You could just say things happen. You might give them some player agency and go, hey, what are some interesting things that you think would have happened during the voyage? So there's like a ton of different ways you can do it. Or you can, have their boat get swallowed by a giant monster.
Right. I mean, I find that it's good to vary it a bit. Like, there are going to be times when getting from point A to point B, like, you don't necessarily have to narrate the voyage in between, and you don't really feel like it. If they're on a pirate ship and constantly sailing, then I think you kind of do need to do a little more of the sort of at-sea style encounters, including they come across a merchant ship. And I mean, that's the stock and trade of being a pirate, is swarming some nearby ship and trying to capture people and the cargo aboard it. So hopefully that comes up a couple times. And I feel like occasionally they should know the world is dangerous and be attacked by some kind of sea monster. And it's going to be a situation where it's going to have to be a fairly challenging sea monster, because they're going to have a whole ship full of people shooting at it.
Yeah, so I'm kind of just envisioning these pirates that go around all the merchant vessels because they're doing the adventure stuff. Guys are terrible pirates, terrible. So we are right at that time where we're going to wrap things up. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us, and we will be back tomorrow. Not sure what I'm doing for the live chat yet. I will figure that out. I'm just still recovering from GenCon. But like I said, Scarlet Sisterhood will be back tonight. Tomorrow night is Saver Dice. Come check us out over on Twitch on the Saver Dice channel. And then Friday will be the Other Skies game. So come check that out as well. I want to thank everybody. And thank you, Kurt, for hanging out with us and being a supporter. Greatly appreciate all you guys. So until next time. Stay nerdy.